Good morning. Welcome to November's bi-monthly webinar. We'll just start out.
Good morning. I have some announcements regarding high school equivalency. Mary Kay has a frog in her throat today, so Christine will deliver these messages. There is a new HiSET contact. Her name is Jonna McDonough, and her contact information is on the slide. If you have questions about becoming a HiSET testing center, contact Jonna to begin the process. Just a reminder, if you have questions regarding GED or HiSET in Pennsylvania or any other high school equivalency questions, you should contact Mary Kay at mkpeters@pa.gov. You should not contact the test vendors for questions about state policies, procedures, or regulations. Update from GED Works. Programs should frequently review the list of employers who are in the GED Works system by visiting www.ged.com. There are always many new employers willing to assist employees and their family members with the services provided through that program. Your students could really benefit from the services provided, including GED Ready and testing costs. Your students may not know that they are eligible for these services, so make sure you check in about that. And now to the professional development portion of the programming. The PDS is going to pilot some co-teaching and some supplemental instruction working with ESL and math teachers working together. We've come up with two approaches that we'd like to test out. One is a co-teaching method where they're both in the room together, and one is a supplemental math where the ESL teacher helps the math teacher to teach math to ESL students. We're looking for programs who might be interested in working with us on this pilot. I believe Hannah sent out an interest survey that you could fill out, and if you are interested, that would be due back to me by November 27th. So if you have any questions, you can contact me or you can contact Hannah, and we'll answer your questions. But we're pretty excited about doing this, so we hope that some of you are interested in giving it a shot. Just a reminder about supplemental distance learning. I think the Distance Education Technical Assistance Project, led by Chuck Klinger, has been getting questions from programs, and they're trying to incorporate it into more and more of their students' work. And just a reminder that you can't limit offering this to certain classes, right? It has to be made available to all students who could be distance learners. So you certainly have to inform all of your students about it and find a way to offer it to those students who would like to do it, regardless of which class they're in your agency. And if you're struggling with that a little bit, give Chuck a call, and he'll see what he can do to help you come up with some procedures to get that done. So that's just a reminder. And another quick reminder that the Career Pathway student reports are now available on PA Adult Ed Resources on the workforce page. So those are now available for you to start filling out for your students this year. Thank you.
Okay, I just have a series of slides with variations of a variety of information. This slide, I think, is important for you to see because these are the key numbers that we report to the federal government. As many of you know, under WIA, so under the old law, we had different federal outcomes. Okay, someone I think just logged on. You may be in your car. Sounded like somebody had a turn signal on, so if you're in your car and just turned on, please mute yourself. Thank you. So under WIA, we had different performance outcome measures, and our performance outcome measures focused on educational functioning level gains, and we had, at the federal level, different targets for each one of the levels, plus we had an outcome for obtaining the high school equivalency, and we had an outcome for entering post-secondary education and training. Under WIOA, for federal reporting purposes, all of those outcomes have been lumped into a single outcome, which is called measurable skill gains, or MSG. As a state, we negotiate a target. Negotiating a target means that the feds send us a worksheet and we plug a bunch of numbers in the worksheet, and the worksheet spits out a number which is our target. So there's not a lot of negotiation involved. While we were doing EFL gains under WIA, we were showing consistent improvement. Our obtain the GED, especially in the last couple of years, was quite high and fairly consistently improved, or at least remained level. And our entered post-secondary wasn't particularly high, but that was in large part due to the individuals who were included in the cohort. So as we are now, almost through the first set of years under WIOA, I kind of wanted to show you where we are with our measurable skill gains that we report to the federal government. And then also show you the trend in Table 4B. This is important because right now, the federal government is not choosing to impose the sanctions on states that WIOA calls for when the states don't meet their targets. I would anticipate that within the next couple of years, they will begin imposing sanctions. And the sanction for not meeting your outcome targets is a reduction in the amount of funds available to the governor out of, I believe, WIOA Title I to do fun, innovative things. So under WIA, when we didn't meet our targets, all it meant was we didn't get incentive funding. Under WIOA, if we do not meet our targets, Pennsylvania's governor loses a pot of money, a portion of a pot of money. So, the implications of not meeting targets is considerably higher now. So while we continue to do agency performance with educational functioning level gains and gaining the high school equivalency and entering post-secondary education and training the way we did it under WIA, it is important for you to understand how we are reporting to the feds, because ultimately it's what you do that determines our success. So, measurable skill gains under WIOA are determined in one of three ways. A person can show an educational functioning level gain based on taking a pre-test and then a post-test and showing a gain, which is obviously the way the majority of our students will show a measurable skill gain if they do. Another option is for them to exit the program and enroll in post-secondary education or training during the program year. So that means before June 30th of the program year. I don't believe we have had any people demonstrate measurable skill gain by that means in the last couple of years. If we have, it's been very few, like under 5. The other way that a person can show measurable skill gain is by earning the high school equivalency credential. And, under WIA, those people didn't, you would say, well, we have these people, they enrolled in high intermediate or low advanced, and they were supposed to show an EFL gain, but they passed the GED test and they didn't get post-tested, so they don't count. Well, under WIOA, they do count as showing a measurable skill gain. So those should have led to actually higher outcomes because people who we previously could not show gains with, we are now able to include. Unfortunately, that is not actually the case. So if you look at the first table, for our measurable skill gains, and these are the first 3 years of performance under WIOA. In 2016-17, our target was 44%, and our outcome was 45.63, so we met it with no problems. For 17-18, the target increased to 46%, which, given the fact that our outcome the previous year was 45.63%, really should have been doable, but instead we dropped down to 43.98%. And then for 18-19, the target increased, and as you can see, the targets always increase, they do not ever go down. We dropped a little bit, a couple hundredths, down to 43.85. And just for perspective, in 2016-17, we had 1,249 individuals show measurable skill gain by getting a high school equivalency credential. And that was about 5.9% of the people who showed a measurable skill gain got it through high school equivalency, not through pre-post testing. So what that actually means is that our measurable skill gain by people who pre and post tested actually dropped from what we had previously done under WIA. And the same is true for 17-18, 18-19. So in 17-18, we had 1,295 individuals show measurable skill gain by getting a high school equivalency credential, and that comprised about 6.15% of all the people who had measurable skill gain. And in 18-19, the year we just completed, we had 1,021, which was 5.95%. So under WIOA, we're at about 6% of individuals showing measurable skill gain by getting a high school equivalency rather than by pre and post testing. And given our outcomes overall, that's actually then demonstrating a significant drop from what we were doing with EFL gains alone in the past. So, when we ask you to do corrective action plans to look at what your outcomes are, this is why. Table 4B, so, we imposed conditions on grants for this year related to an agency's progress towards meeting, we didn't have a target, but we were kind of like your progress by March 2020 towards, how were you doing with the percentage of individuals who showed an EFL gain based on pre-post testing. And at the time, we put the cutoff at 67%, because, as you can see in Table 4B, that was what the percentage was for 17-18 when we didn't meet our target. And then our final result for 18-19 was that programs post-tested about 61% of the students in your program. And of those people, only 2/3 of them showed an EFL gain, which resulted in less than 44% of our students showing any type of measurable skill gain when we include the people who get high school equivalencies. So we're trending downward in measurable skill gain. And measurable skill gain is the area that we really have to show the impact of adult education and the work that you do. All of the other outcomes that we report to the feds are employment rate related, and they're after exit. So these are just some data for you to look at to help you understand, what we're doing as a state and how we are performing against targets that we have and expectations, and give you some context for why we are asking you to focus on things. Now, we have gotten questions from individuals. Well, what percentage of people do you want me to get who get an EFL gain? And here's the thing, I'm not going to set targets, because then people hit the target and they think they're okay. So here is what our expectations are for you. You will enroll 100% of the individuals that you are contracted to enroll. 100% of those individuals will remain in the program long enough to meet their educational and personal goals, which will include being able to post-test them and have them get an educational functioning level gain, or they will go on and take the high school equivalency test if necessary and will show a measurable skill gain. Now, those are not your targets, but those are what we expect. So I hope you understand that. You enroll people and you get outcomes for them. That is what is expected. And so if we're moving along during the program year and we realize that the trend is not towards meeting numbers that we will need to meet as a state, then there are conditions that can be imposed. But I'm not willing to set a hard number where you think, okay, I hit the number, I'm off the hook, we're good. Well, I'm going to wash my hands clean. It's somebody else's responsibility. So this is context of what we are reporting. This stuff goes to Congress. This stuff is available publicly to show the outcomes that we have. So this is there for you to think about and look at. Okay, back in July, I had several slides about the national assessment of the implementation of adult education and the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And I told you that as providers, you would be getting surveys in the fall, which you are expected to respond to. The national study is an evaluation being done because WIOA requires the federal offices to do evaluations of services. So, the survey that was sent to you is being conducted as a requirement under WIOA. As a recipient of the funds under that law, we are requiring you to respond to that survey. Last Monday, I got an email from the people conducting the survey letting me know that only 15 agencies had responded to one letter and multiple emails. So as of Monday, November 11th, 27 of you had not yet completed the survey. Since we have only 42 grantees, that's less than a third of our funded programs. So I would like to thank these agencies who had completed it as of last week. If you've done it in the meantime, I'm sorry I'm not providing your name. I'm going with what I received a week ago. Thank you to Altoona Area School District, Bradford County Action, Chester County OIC, Employment Skills Center, Intermediate Unit 1, Lehigh Carbon Community College, Luzerne County Community College, Marywood University, New World Association, Northampton Community College, Seneca Highlands IU9, Project of Easton, Somerset Career and Tech Center. I'm sorry, that was Somerset County Technology Center. I said your name wrong. Temple University and Tri-County OIC. Those of you who have not completed the survey, including all family literacy programs, need to go back into your emails and find that survey and complete it. You do need to take time to complete it completely and accurately. I realize I'm telling you that you have to do it, but it is important, and the reason that they are contacting providers is that this is a way for them to collect information on how adult education is being implemented at the local level under WIOA throughout the United States. And it provides you an opportunity to tell the federal office about your programs and describe the challenges that you are experiencing under WIOA. And your responses are critical to the federal office being able to obtain a full and accurate picture of adult education providers to be shared with policymakers, state administrators, and program providers. You know, whether you believe it or not, at the federal level, the office does advocate strongly when bills are being rewritten. When WIOA was being written, there were no outcomes tied to the work that we do. Measurable skill gains was added because of advocacy from the federal office and some federal organizations, saying we really need to be able to track progress towards one of these other exit-based goals, you know, progress while people are in programming. And a lot of that comes from what they know is happening at the local level. So this really is a way for the federal office to get a picture of what is actually happening, which allows them to inform regulations and future laws. So, you know, it's important for you to be able to do that. In addition, when we get down into the weeds, the regulations from the Federal Department of Education require all recipients of federal funds to cooperate in evaluations of grant programs. So you really are, as a grantee, obligated not only by us, because we're telling you to, but also by the federal regulations to complete these. Okay, some reminders. Now we're going to get down into local program stuff. Reminder, data entry needs to happen within 14 days of collection, and we do expect programs to be reviewing your data on a regular basis for accuracy. It's much easier to make corrections over the course of the year than at the end of the year or after eData has closed. So please make sure you're looking at things on a regular basis. And the access template has been out for about a week now, so that is there for you to use. We got some questions, or the MIS, the eData Tech Assistance program had gotten a lot of questions around the initials to use when an assessment is being given or has been given by other non-division adult education programs or by your workforce partners. And we've decided you should use Z as the initials for those, just because we think it's pretty unlikely that there are a lot of people in the field whose initials are ZZ. So that was kind of a generic one. And that's the way you can show us and yourselves that that assessment was given by someone other than a staff member at your agency or at one of the other division-funded agencies.
When doing this, try for as much accuracy as you can. We haven't thought about our desk monitoring yet for the access template, but I'm certain that one of the things the advisors will be looking at is, somebody who has a preponderance of ZZs will, that'll probably draw some checking on your data. So just, try to be accurate. If you have the appropriate initials, use them, and only use ZZ when it's, something outside your program.
Thank you. Okay. Within this week, I will be sending out a couple of survey monkeys. We need to collect information for our 1819 narrative report. There's a section that we have to write a narrative on related to corrections education, and there is also another section where we have to write about collaboration and integration with the PA Career Links and with your workforce partners. And while we have kind of data from eData, I have found in the past when I did the surveys that you were able to provide me with really good information that we can use to flesh out our answers. And the federal office has indicated that they really like having examples of collaboration and partnerships and best practices included in the narrative reports because they are often asked by members of Congress and other stakeholders for examples of what local programs are doing. And the federal office is not allowed to send out questions to the state offices in response to that. It has something to do with the paperwork and, time management type. There's some law that was passed that basically prevents them from doing that. So they really like to be able to have this type of information in our narrative reports. For those of you who did the corrections education survey last year, it will be fairly similar. We'll be asking questions about the facilities at which you provide corrections education, a summary of the content of the MOUs that you have with the local facility, information about recidivism data, a narrative description of the services you provide, and especially a focus on any type of re-entry programming that you have or that you do in partnership with maybe re-entry organizations in your community. So, if you want to begin collecting that information, if you provided corrections education over 1819, that will be in those surveys. And then the collaboration and integration with workforce partners will be very similar to surveys that we've done in the past. I don't believe I did one last year, but previous years, where we asked about the specific services that you provided at a Careers Link site, since you are required to provide access to your services by one of the three optional means, one of the three optional methods. We'll be asking about that, kind of talking about career services that you make available at the PA Career Link site, and any type of collaboration that you have with any workforce partners, especially Title I and Title III. And when we talk about the collaboration that happens with those workforce partners, that does not have to happen at the Career Link. I was contacted by the Pennsylvania Workforce Development Board for some information on how Title I and Title III are helping support individuals with basic skills needs and English language learners. And I don't know that, of course, because Title I and Title III do not report to this office. But through conversations with local programs, I think there might be some really interesting things happening at the local level that they're doing in collaboration with you to improve their services for individuals who are potentially or are in fact also our clients. So any information that you would have about such activities would be very, very useful. There will be more detail in the Survey Monkeys themselves. Like I said, I'm hoping to get them out by the end of this week, hoping for responses by December 6th so that I have time to collect everything and finalize the report, which is due December 31st. So I would appreciate your help with that. The Corrections Education Survey will go out to all of you. for those of you who do not offer corrections education with our grants, you will just simply answer NA or not provided for the first part. And that way we just know that it's clear that your agency didn't do it. This is just a slide to kind of provide some guidance, suggestions when it comes to your agency policies and procedures. So, we require you to have policy and procedures around data collection and entry, which you're working on after the Data Institute. You have to have an attendance policy for your students, which also includes information about how you will ensure compliance, how you'll enforce it. We have intake and orientation, and I am totally blank. Oh, an assessment policy. So as we've kind of been reviewing policies and reading them, one item we've seen fairly frequently is that programs are simply restating division policy. And that's not the purpose. So we have a policy that says what programs are expected to do around assessment. But that covers all programs with all types of assessments. So what your policy and procedure, and I think for the local programs, procedures are really important. What you are doing is saying how you and your staff will do things to ensure that you are in compliance with our policy. So simply stating our policy is kind of meaningless unless you're saying, unless that's kind of the precursor to saying, here's the division policy and this is what we are going to do to ensure that we're in compliance. But simply pulling the words out of our policy is not what we're looking for. You want to be specific, especially in the procedures. Who is going to do what and when? What resources will you use and when? And what should staff do in a variety of scenarios? So the idea is you could give an assessment policy to a new employee, and after going through the required training, which they'll know how to do because that's in your policy, they will have a really clear guide of what their steps will be as an employee to make sure they're assessing appropriately. And the same with your other policies. And then we recommend that you review those policies and, again, especially the procedures, kind of on a fairly regular basis and go in as your procedures are revised. We have gotten some policies and procedures that were written for 18-19 that were not even updated to include new dates. So, you, at a minimum, if you're going to have annual policies, you will want to update those. But you may find that the procedures that you put in place last year don't work for certain sites, or they don't work for certain students or things like that. So you do want to make sure that you are updating the procedures as you find necessary at a local level. These are the 2020 bi-monthly webinar dates. Tentative, we do sometimes change them. And then we will also have the face-to-face kickoff probably in early August. That seems to have been a date that works for many people. And this is just an FYI. We are not the experts on this, so if you have questions about it, you will need to contact the appropriate people. But the federal government released a final rule on September 24th, 2019 regarding updated overtime rules. And most professional managerial staff are considered exempt from overtime. However, there is a threshold under which people who would normally be exempt are not exempt because their salaries are considered low. And effective January 1st, 2020, there are new federal thresholds, which Pennsylvania obviously will also be implementing. But then, beginning in 2021, Pennsylvania has proposed more generous overtime rules. And what we mean by that is higher thresholds under which a person must be given overtime, even if they are professional managerial type positions. And then, so there's an increase in 2021 for Pennsylvania, an increase in 2022 for Pennsylvania, and after that, every 3 years, there will be automatic increases. I'm bringing this up because when I was on a phone call where this was explained, the person explaining it said that they feel like community-based organizations with relatively low salaries may be impacted by this, especially in the next couple of years. And when I did the calculations, there are adult ed programs that are currently funded by us who are very close to the threshold. So I would recommend that you begin looking at your salaries for full-time employees and consider whether or not you may have to look at increasing them. If you have questions about this, you will want to talk to employment and HR experts, not the advisors or me. So this is just kind of an FYI to let you know that if this is something that raises a concern for you as an administrator or as an executive director, you might want to begin investigating. Okay? And that is it. I will check the chat to see if there are any questions. And also, you should be able to unmute yourself if you would like to ask a question verbally. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone just in case when you're trying to unmute yourself, you're having issues. What that means is everyone will now be unmuted. So if you don't want to be unmuted, you'll need to remute yourself. Okay, are there any questions? Okay, you can either take the mic and ask your question, or you can type in questions. We'll give it another minute or two, and if no one has any questions, we'll end the webinar.
Amanda?
Yes?
I have a question. When it comes to our policies and procedures that we do, and we have subgrantees, should we specify each, because they're different at the different subgrantees, they're following the basic guidelines, should we be reporting each agency's policy and procedure? Or just the main grantee?
Well, what I would say is everyone who receives our funds should have policies and procedures. If for you as a grantee with subgrantees find that it works better for you for each subgrantee to have their own policies and procedures, that's fine. You are responsible for making sure that they are compliant, and if we monitored you or when we monitor you, you would want to make sure that those are available to us. But they do not necessarily have to be part of the overall policy. I think I would leave that up to the grantee. So if there are grantees listening to this who have subgrantees and you want to be able to include them in your overall policy, that is one option. If you have subgrantees that have their own policies and those address what is necessary for us, that would also be acceptable. But the grantee is still kind of needs to make sure that that has happened. Okay?
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
If you had previously put a comment in the message board while Amanda was talking during the presentation today, those comments aren't showing for us. So it's not that we're not answering them, it's that we're not seeing them. So if you did have a question, if you could retype that, that would be great.
Okay. It looks like we don't have any more questions. As I always say, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to your advisors, and they will be happy to help you. So hope everyone has a very good holiday season, and we will talk to you on, let me go back to my slide, January 27th. Thank you.